Welcome to GlideChat, where we give you the rundown of all things ServiceNow. Let's talk about the now, right now.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of GlideChat. I'm Brett Karl, VP of Solutions and Alliances. I'm here today with Ted and Terrence from EchoStor. Gentlemen, how are you doing today?
Doing fantastic.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having us, Brett.
That's great. So we're going to just jump right into it. Just tell me a little bit about what you do, and then let's talk about EchoStor and just get into your organization, and then we'll get into our partnership and get a few other conversational pieces that we'll just talk about.
Sure. So I manage the ServiceNow and digital workflows business for EchoStor Technologies. Came over in October of last year to run the business and transform a little bit. And before that, I spent 5 years over at ServiceNow, owning some ServiceNow skills, and previous to that, stints at VMware and CA and others as well over the years.
And my name is Ted Gronostalski, and I've been at EchoStor for over 3 years now, dedicated specifically to our ServiceNow business. Before that, I've been in various roles at Dell, EMC, and support as a coach, systems engineer, solutions architect, really for the next generation data center, whether it's hyperconverged or not. And that blends nicely when we start talking with our ITOM and hardware asset management customers into our ServiceNow conversations.
So I'm gathering is you're the tech and you're the business side that I'm speaking with. Is that pretty accurate?
Correct, yes.
Right. So what did you do at the ServiceNow side, Terrence, when you were over there for how many ever years?
So at ServiceNow, I led the solution consulting team for the TX workflow family for several years, and then transitioned into sort of delivery sales, starting to deliver on and working with partners like GlideFast and others, as well as ServiceNow's own delivery resources, delivering comprehensive solutions based on the workflow family for our customers.
So it's kind of a natural fit for you to come over to the EchoStor side, would you say?
Yeah, I think what EchoStor was looking to do with their business and the experience that I had accumulated at ServiceNow and in other roles in my career was a natural fit. And it was an exciting opportunity to do a little change and then bring some of the experiences I had with working in the delivery side and the customer side, meld them together, and take this new approach.
Okay. So, Ted, from what I heard of your experience, you did not come from ServiceNow. So how did that fit into you going into EchoStor and leading this part of it?
Absolutely. So being part of New England, I'm always familiar with EchoStor and partnered nicely with Dell in terms of the data center side. However, I've always been working on ServiceNow. Fun fact, I was that stick in the mud during an implementation at Dell on the support side, saying, being an advocate for our customers and suggesting that they're going to have a reduced value and reduced satisfaction with their cases. Of course, it's funny, going back and reflecting on that, and 10 years forward, I'm now the one that's having those organizational change management conversations, as opposed to what I was 10 years ago as a stick in the mud, trying to stay on the platform that we were. So those conversations naturally led into knowing EchoStor, knowing what they can do, and being excited to work with ServiceNow.
So we've said EchoStor probably about 10 or 15 times, but what exactly do you guys do? Can you give me a little bit of the origin story, how you were founded, how you got to this point, what's our relationship with GlideFast? Can you dive into that a little bit?
Sure. I'll give you what I know about the EchoStor history, and I'll give you where we are today. Ted can probably ad-lib in some areas because he's been on board there longer. But my relationship with EchoStor goes back almost to the beginning of EchoStor back in 20 years ago. So when I was at VMware, we did a lot of business with one of the founders, Scott Trink, and the previous founder, previous owner, John Dooley. And we did quite a bit of joint work on the delivery side for VMware. That's sort of how the nexus of my relationship with those folks, and that transitioned over to folks like Tony DeLallo, who's the COO and president of EchoStor these days. They've grown from a smaller vendor type area that focused mostly on the data center at the time into like a $250 million business that has 6 pillars of business, whether it's modern data center, networking, security, an active AI pillar where we have a center of excellence and our CIO leads that sort of business as well too. To the digital workflows business, which is primarily ServiceNow, and then our modern workplace, which is the Microsoft portfolio that we sell. So we've grown in years of over time, and we're really known for our customer centric point of view and how we can actually help them in multiple different areas. So the ServiceNow area is an exposed area for us in a way that we've done business in the other pillars for many years, and the ServiceNow is sort of a natural carryover into that. So when I was brought on to help build this business and stay into a little different direction, we looked at, hey, how could we do things a little bit better? And we can start working with experts in the ServiceNow business, like GlideFast, for example, who can deliver solutions for our customers across all the workflow families inside ServiceNow, which is really difficult for a company like EchoStor to deliver across all those workflow families, especially with all the different pillars of responsibility that we actually had outside of the digital workflows area. So that's why I came on board. And like I said, the customer centricity, the employee centricity, where we're really all about the employees. Most people don't leave EchoStor unless they want to. And we have a good history of working with our partners, very well represented partner community throughout the pillars. So those things were really exciting for me. And they've been a name in New England primarily for many, many years. You see their advertising in the Boston Garden, on the Zamboni, at the Red Sox games, on WDEI, other news programs. So they've got a really pronounced name in the technology industry outside in New England. Ted, maybe you might want to add a few things that specific to the EchoStor history as well.
Absolutely. And depending where we are, at the bar, at an event, you say EchoStor, maybe they're a huge hockey fan and they've seen it. Maybe they're playing golf and they see Jake Knapp and they see EchoStor in their logo. I do get pride in that, in reflecting back. And so, what does EchoStor really do? And it goes back to that customer and client-centric approach. We listen to our customers, and at EchoStor, we're capable of providing the entire gambit of IT solutions, outside of IT solutions. So we could have just, a close client, a close customer come to us in a green space with just an idea, and we can help them and enable them and build their IT infrastructure and beyond. So it's a part of pride, and it's a part of, we're building something at EchoStor. And my personal motto is always just trying to make the world a better place. I feel like I can do that at EchoStor by enabling our customers, whether it be in healthcare, whether it be in automotive industries, telecoms, all the different industry verticals that I get pride in every single day.
So walk me through a typical capability stack for one of your customers or one of your prospects. So you have company ABC, and they come to you or you approach them to solve any sort of pain points. What are the areas you're normally seeing people struggle with or need solutions for? And then how does that build upon your pillars, whether it's all 6 of them or 3 of them, a little bit of ServiceNow, a little bit of hosting, whatever it might be. Talk me through that.
Absolutely. So I think we should talk, let's take security as an example. It's always a hot topic, whether it be security vulnerabilities, preparing yourself for security vulnerabilities, or even, in terms of a data center, having an air gap and a strategy for solution and remediation. So, taking that as an example, leveraging ServiceNow to make sure that they're compliant, making sure that they feel safe, and leveraging with their other tools as well. EchoStor does have that capability of not just, being able to speak to the ServiceNow terms and language and lingo, but then, having that broader picture, integrating with partners like Arctic Wolf and what those clients are using, Sentinel, those different areas, is how we kind of bring the value and get that big picture as well. Not just the digital workflows, not just the ServiceNow, but beyond as well. And a lot of that comes down to process, understanding the processes, understanding those business objectives to identify those challenges and rise to overcome. Whether the solution is ServiceNow and other solutions, integrating, automating, and adding efficiencies is what we're going to be suggesting to our clients.
So the past several years, I think you mentioned you've been around for just shy of a decade or so for EchoStor.
20 years.
20 years. Oh, 20. Sorry, I misspoke on that one. It's okay. So 20 years. Where were you before as far as providing value and capabilities for ServiceNow? And then what brought you to the conclusion that we want to engage with a partner such as GlideFast to either go after those more complex projects or that other avenue? So talk to me about that.
Sure. So I think, where we've come from is like many other smaller boutique, service providers in the ServiceNow space, and historically other types of vendors as well too that have taken a similar path, right? ServiceNow just happens to be the vendor we're talking about right now, but I think you probably can understand. You get really good at the products that you originate with, and you have a lot of experience in. But vendors don't stand still, right? They grow organically. They acquire other technology. They have to expand in order to be competitive. So the portfolio of products and solutions typically gets bigger. It becomes very difficult for a smaller company in a lot of ways to actually compete on on keeping a big bench of folks up to date on all that technology, and still be competitive with price and cost. And I think what we found ourselves doing is we were really good in a few different areas, and we had a chance to, do we want to stay in this area, or do we want to try to do something different and take advantage of where the marketplace is going and support our customers across the infrastructure and across the enterprise, which is where we saw ServiceNow going. So for us, it was a natural play for us to, let's look at different skills that we could be adapting into the overall mission of what EchoStor can deliver for a customer. So things like employee resources on HR, things like security and risk, areas that probably we didn't play in before, like enterprise asset management or workforce service delivery, things that weren't core to ITSM, for example. We thought that's where most of the conversations seemed to be coming. And quite frankly, a lot of the budgets were coming from outside of IT. And a lot of the spend for customers were not really related to IT anymore. So that area we had locked down pretty good, like a lot of ServiceNow partners, but it wasn't a growth potential for us. So we had to do something a little bit different. And with a new CEO that came on last year, who's been with the company since the beginning as well, he was one of the key sales leaders, and Mike Johnson, who goes by the type, MJ, he really wanted to change things up a little bit, and he wanted to make sure that we could adapt to business as it was adapting in the infrastructure. So we moved our model a little bit, and having a partner like you have areas that you're really, really good at and known for. You have a great track record of that, and you have the resources across that spectrum, and that's something that we don't have to invest in, but we can leverage. And I think the synergy between us is we're all customer-centric. We know what you're really good at. We're great on account management. We have long-standing relationships with our accounts. We can bring other areas of the business closer to you as well, too. And that makes it exciting to have this partnership and this sort of change of direction.
No, that's great. I think with our capabilities, where we currently are as an organization, we've blown past your typical ITX, ITSM, ITOM, HR, CSM, now CRM, and morphing more into that TMT, SOM, and everything else that's out there with ServiceNow. So definitely looking to work with you and elevate your existing customers and your future customers there. I want to shift tracks a little bit and talk about partner rankings with ServiceNow. So all of you guys have seen where the partner ecosystem with ServiceNow went in the past month or so, but there was quite a churn where essentially half of all the elite partners dropped down a level or two. They either went to the specialist or they went to a registered partner. What do you see as that being an impact with any sort of customers moving forward? One thing that we've done well on the GlideFast side is we've maintained that elite status. But what have you seen in this space, and what have you heard from customers from that angle?
Great question. I was at sales kickoff for ServiceNow with just like you were, Brett, right? And I heard the same messages, and I saw the looks in the faces of and it was no surprise it was coming, so a lot of us were prepped for it. And I think, I'm not surprised that happened, and I think it's worrisome in a couple areas for me if I was in a different situation. Losing your certain status, and if people are really hung up or focused on what level of partner you are based on ServiceNow's hierarchy, that can be really damaging, right? But I think it's what really enables us to do is try to actually get the message about what your capabilities are as a partner and what you can deliver. And it's not so much hinged on what ServiceNow as a vendor likes to classify their partner community for, because the reality is that really doesn't mean a lot to the customer at the end of the day. Now, customers see that, and sometimes you'll answer an RFP and it'll say things like, must be ServiceNow Elite Partner. But they don't really even know what that means, right? Until you have a conversation with them and they're unaware about the capabilities of a lot of partners. So from that aspect, I think it's problematic in a way, but you can overcome those with some conversations with the customer, right? The problematic portion I see as a former ServiceNow employee and someone who works in the ServiceNow area now is I look at the types of partners who are maintaining that top notch up there, and I wonder what their motive is. And in some cases, a lot of their motives seem to be taking on the license in the business and buying the business from customers at any cost. And almost like a race to the bottom, if you will, of like, let's do everything for this customer, put our resources in place to not just ServiceNow, but do everything. And I think that looks good on a balance sheet for a lot of people, but the reality is you lose that interactiveness and that community feel with delivering projects for a customer, building those relationships, and that that community that ServiceNow has become famous for. A lot of those resources become sort of offshore in a lot of way, and they're just capabilities based, and there's not a lot of personality in that. And I think the people who suffer are the folks who own the projects and the folks who work inside ServiceNow every day, because they don't have that familiarity with the people who help them get to where they are. And so to me, I worry about that. And my talk track to the customer is, it's like, hey, we may not do everything that these partners do, but we do these things really, really well, which is, we're going to look out for you. We're going to put you first. You know, we're not $1 billion company. We're a pretty large company from a partner perspective. But, you know, our focus is, I'm only responsible for ServiceNow. Ted's only responsible for ServiceNow. You're only responsible for ServiceNow. So when we work together, I think the message, of course, is, hey, GlideFast, for example, still maintains this. They're capable of doing this with these resources. Others aren't, but some of us are thinking, okay, we should partner with the folks who can continue to do this, and they're not looking to do that other level of things like the Cognizants of the world and the Infosys of the world, right? So,
yeah, absolutely. And the big thing to consider is the numbers prior to January were about 134 elite for global. Now it's down to 78, I believe, and 38 of those are in America. So right now, we're in the GlideFast office of one of 38 elite partners. You know, are we a global elite? No, that's where the $1 billion book of business comes into play. That's something to strive for as we go on. But as far as the PLAs, the validated practices, the CSAT score, even the impact and source revenue, things that matter to ServiceNow in that sense, I think we try to capitalize on that. And I'll tell you, trying to maintain that level, it's a Herculean feat to keep track of all the metrics and KPIs to achieve that pinnacle. Oh, and by the way, we have to keep doing it because there's monthly check-ins. Yeah. And so again, I think with our partnership, we're able to assist with your customers and elevate you as an organization, but also continue with ours for what we're doing. And iron sharpens iron at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's a really good point, I think, because for your perspective is you've earned the right to be where you are right now, but you're also seeing how difficult it is to maintain that based on an arbitrary level that this other company is setting. And yes, they have a lot of responsibility in their name and their brand, but I don't necessarily think that the number of elite partners out there, you can't equate all those elite partners equally, right? So there's different levels, and for someone like GlideFast, who's been in our backyard in the Boston, New England area for a long time, we know you. We have relationships with individuals. Our customers have seen each other, so there's a history there. It makes it easy to work with, and it also, I think, from us, it gives us a little bit more like we know what you're doing, and you know how you can help us as well too. So there's some strength in that partnership as well too, and I think people overlook that. It can be really, really strong. There's areas that we're really good at as a company that could help you, and vice versa is what we're trying to take advantage of. And at the end of the day, our job is really to provide for our customers. And that's what we're doing. We're not doing it in a self-serving fashion for EchoStor or for GlideFast. We're in business because customers need help, right? And I think this is the easiest way for us to provide that to them.
Ted, have you noticed anything in the ecosystem since that shift?
Well, I think that's a great call out for RFPs specifically. Is a lot of clients, sometimes they have someone putting together this RFP and it's a checkbox of your partner status. And that's not a true reflection of the solution. That's not a true reflection of what we're implementing. And it's not a true reflection of what the client wants. It's just, a checklist, a checkbox. But, when you are, providing the right solution with the right personnel, and everyone buys into that solution, and both technically, financially, and excited for the solution, sometimes it can be hard to just have a checkbox stop that progress and stop that relationship. So with EchoStor and GlideFast partnering together, we're able to expand that partnership into other accounts that we've never been able to, and provide more value to our clients than ever before.
I'm going to shift tracks and shift gears again. And this one's going to come out of left field. But I think it's all been in the news. You can't ignore it. Every time you turn the TV, you're going to hear about it. And that's DOGE. I want to talk about the Department of Government Efficiency, whether you agree with it or not. I want to know, from your perspective at EchoStor, do you think it's going to make a difference on the federal level, transition to the state level, transition to the actual organization? Are companies going to get efficient, or are we going to continue with a lift and shift model? Based on all that you've seen and your experience in the last 10, 20 years in the either in the ecosystem or in IT in general, what are your thoughts on that?
I'd like to go first.
Please.
I love that you mentioned efficiency, and I love that you brought it up with DOGE. I think the biggest thing that we can learn is in all growing inefficiencies is through organizational change management and proper change management foundations. Whenever that EchoStor and GlideFast are implementing a solution, you have to have a concrete plan before, during, and after, when you're initiating an implementation, when you're switching over to a new project, when you're migrating from one platform to the next. So you have to have all those bolts tightened, all those T's crossed, and all those I's dotted before jumping to any kind of situations that could cause into any kind of issues, unjustly firing. Now, efficiency is the name of the game, and many times that we can come in here and some of the solutions with automation and AI, they could be eliminating jobs, but we always have to weigh the pros with the cons and evaluate all the different risk assessors and identify the pros and cons to make that decision before jumping to anything. So that's my personal opinion and reflection on it, that with Doge, they should also practice what they preach and make sure that they're instilling great practices, great processes through change management and organizational change management.
I love that you went on a limb there with your personal feelings. I'll say this. I'm always an optimist. I try to be optimistic in life. That's just the way I get out of bed in the morning if I can, right? And so I want to believe that it's going to be effective for the majority of Americans, right? I'm not going to say for everyone, because nothing we ever do or encounter is going to be for everybody. But for the majority of Americans, I'm hopeful it will be. I think this word efficiency is interesting, because at the end of the day, why does ServiceNow even exist? It's all about making things more efficient for the end user and for that worker who's doing task-based work, right? So that's how it started way back in the day with Fred Luddy, right? So it should be a natural progression, like theoretically, about making things efficient. That's what we do. Like the projects that we sell, or the consulting time that we sell, and the licenses that we sell on behalf of ServiceNow, is to try to make a company's role, whether to their consumers or their citizens, if it's a municipality or a state agency, it's about making things more efficient in some way, shape, or form, right? So you can't lose sight of that. I do think it's been a little easier on the private side, obviously, because you don't have as many hurdles to go through as you do with regulated areas like, federal government, state and local agencies, towns, municipalities, school systems, whatever it may be, and even universities to a certain degree, right? So I don't know how much is going to translate. We are in Massachusetts after all, so I don't think the prevailing wisdom is to follow what Doge is doing. I think it's to disrupt and to be against it until they see a benefit that's going to help out.
I'm going to challenge that second to last part a little bit. My experience in IT has always been, there's a new tool, there's a new platform, there's a new product. We're going to invest in this. But our process stays the same. We're going to lift and shift and just move it over. And then in about 5 years, we'll do a reevaluation and just see. So we go from spending $5 million to maybe spending $4 million. So we save a little bit, but the process never changed. Why do you think that is? Why do companies continue to just adopt a new platform because it's either right in the new wave, or it's maybe it's a cost savings? But at the end, it's, well, we don't want to be too disruptive. No one wants to pull the Band-Aid off and do the hard thing. So, we've talked a little about Fed and public sector, but on the actual enterprise and commercial side, why do you think that is?
Don't have all the answers, but I'll give you my opinion. So I do think the majority of direction, since I've been in the business for 30 years or so, right, has been coming from IT. IT likes shiny new objects. They like new technology. They like to stay on board as technologists and provide for the company. I think that has a lot to do with it. Like the decisions a lot of times have been IT driven or IT heavy decision influencing, right? So I think that's one area. The second area why things don't change, I think, is because they always come from a technology standpoint, right? So it's always about what this could do something, not like we have to do these things in order to have this do something. Recently, yesterday, we had a call with a customer, right? In the customer's call, we found out that like a whole new group that wasn't accounted for in the original interviews and the original workshops was now having an opinion on what should happen. So that was a big miss earlier, like by the teams, on making sure that everyone who had to say something about organizational change management was alerted earlier, right? Not coming in at the 9th hour. And I think that still happens too often. There's communication misfires. We don't do enough deep scoping or understanding what a customer needs to do. And the customers themselves don't do enough deep understanding of who they're going to influence and who's going to have say back to any changes that are out there. Technology is easy. You install it, you do some things with it, it makes some changes in your environment, it helps out a few things, but we're still trying to take a 12-step process to work it into this new technology versus taking 6 or 7 steps out of there because I had 3 or 4 other groups I had to talk to. That's just superficially, that's what I see from that perspective.
And my 2 cents, honestly, my 1.5 cents is back at the EMC, prior to Dell acquisition, we had a motto that EMC, everything must change. And now that wasn't our culture code. That was just an observation that we're going to get new tools, we're going to get new processes, and we have trust in the system. Little did I know back in the day that what I was describing was organizational change management. Now we can put words to paper, and we can put paper to action, and making sure that we're doing it, the appropriate way. Whether it be a missed step on the customer or ours, we always got to do what's right. But that goes back to that everything must change. The processes, the tools, and the people. We have to be flexible, and we have to be open to these new ways of doing work, whether that be remotely or a new tool or changing those processes. But when I say everything must change, change is hard. Change is hard at the individual level. Like, I don't want to change my commute to, take a car instead of or the train and vice versa. But it's even harder at the organizational level, where the appropriate steps need to be taken.
Yeah, I'll take a different approach to what I think why some people are either stuck in the past or stuck with their process, and they become these process pack rats at the end of the day. I think a lot of it's fear. And so fear could be fear of the unknown. It could be fear of change. It could be fear of losing employees. I can tell you that one of my earlier projects I had at ServiceNow when I was there was with a certain DoD branch, and we were rolling out ServiceNow brand new, and we actually had people in the room, contractors, that were very resistant to any sort of change in adoption. It was going from a legacy competitor that ServiceNow has that was an on-premise to now the cloud. And the reaction, and I quote, we were told, we'll just wait. We'll just wait it out. We'll just sit here. We won't talk. We won't give you information. And you'll be gone. You'll be gone in a year or two, and we'll go back to our legacy systems, and that's just what it'll be. And they were so stuck in their old way of either a job security or not wanting to learn something different, not wanting to adopt a change. That was the mentality from that. And so it's stuck with me for the past, now we're going on 12 years here. I've been working in this space. It's bizarre. I always look at IT as evolving every 12 to 18 to 24 months. There's always something new. What I did back in 2008 is different than what I did in 2016, which is different than what I did now. And you always have to adapt or innovate, right? And to steal our GlideFast mantra, it's innovate or die, right? You have to keep growing, have to keep swimming and evolving there, or you're really just going to fall to the wayside and become those people resistant to change. And so I think really it's fear that is the main driver. But again, that's my hot take on that.
Oh, I think fear plays a role. Absolutely. Of course, there's no doubt. It's almost like that's the table stakes in every conversation, right? That fear is going to be there. We just changed headquarters. We opened a brand new facility that you thank you for coming and representing GlideFast for us, right, in our open house. But from Hopkinton to Norwood, Mass, right, and it was a good amount of fear for people who now have to change their commute, right, to come into Norwood, right. They're taking a different highway, they're different roads. So I mean, even things like that, there's fear of the unknown, right. I totally get it. I think one of the areas that is going to help, and I'm like I said, I'm an optimist, right. So I'm optimistic that because the budgets seem to be sliding into lines of business more frequently than before. I mean, we've been talking about this for 10 years in this industry, like how to get outside of IT. Well, I'm seeing more and more opportunities with budgets being unlocked out of the IT. IT's still influencing, right? But they don't control that budget anymore. And because you have something like a platform like ServiceNow in there, or you have these hyperscalers doing business at an unbelievable amount, like Amazon's and Microsoft, right, for customers before not operating their own data centers anymore. The onus of IT having to have the final say in everything, I think, is slowly waning. It's still there from heavy influence, but it's slowly waning. This is a great opportunity to jump on board and really start to sell outside IT. And you have to learn those personas. You have to understand what motivates them. And if the budget's there, if you can tie it back to an investment a company's already made, like in ServiceNow, which is a pretty healthy investment in time and monies, right, and people in most cases, right, let alone process, if you've done the changes, I think that's a great opportunity to help assuage fear, because you're bringing a new group of folks into the equation and the conversation than you had before. So I'm not saying you're starting at ground zero, but you have less minds to turn. You just have minds you have to educate as to what's possible now. So I'm hopeful the art of the possible becomes a great conversation for a lot of us going forward.
Nope, agreed. I appreciate that. So I want to go ahead and wrap here, talk about some future predictions. So if you look at ServiceNow, we started with machine learning, went to AI, generative AI. Now it's agentic AI. Now the robots and the agents They're going to do everything for us. They're going to do every single thing for us. I don't have to worry about making my bed. It's going to be done by agents and agentic AI. We're getting to this precipice of tech. So what's next after agentic AI? What's next after AI? Whether it's ServiceNow or IT, what are your predictions? I'll start with you, Ted.
Yeah, agentic AI, very, very exciting area. Just the fact that you have agents talking to agents to solve solutions. Isn't that what we're supposed to be doing? Like, this is kind of be, scary. It goes back to fear. It goes back to change. But it also goes back to controls and doing it correctly. And I think ServiceNow is, doing it correctly with this orchestration, the capability to add governance to what they can access or manage that. And I think that's a great step forward, and even that future step forward that we needed in the AI space, that governance, that control over, what can it leverage, what can it see to make those decisions, whether they be automated approvals or automated requests or just conversational ways to get one place or the other. What I foresee, and it's already happening, is deeper integrations into the other platforms. ServiceNow has been touted as the manager of manager, the communication tower in that IT realm. And that's also going to be linking back those other areas, the HR, the legal, the finance. IT is still going to be, having essentially the keys to the castle in order to enable those other agentic AIs and those other agentic solutions that are outside of the IT traditionally, HR, CSM, for instance. What's going to be exciting, though, down the line, and I'm always reflecting back on like a little cartoon. So like I use AI to generate this long email, and then on the other side is the person receiving the email that I used AI to summarize this email. And what's getting lost in the process? And that, it kind of goes back to that GRC and that control there. Got to make sure that the data is accurate. So going forward, I'm foreseeing a lot of different methods of control, maybe external methods of control. I foresee whole new companies that are going to be put in place and in the middle as almost like a load balancer for these AI technologies, keeping them honest, keeping them accurate, the checks and the balance systems.
Great. Well,
sorry.
I'll go back with my optimism, right? And I am pretty impressed. I will say I walked out of ServiceNow's kickoff this past year pretty impressed with what they've done, not just technology-wise, but the numbers were like they had agentic AI rolled out into 5 customers they were driving this through, right? And they had 1,000 customers signed up on their Pro Plus package to take advantage of what they were able to do in those 5 key customers, right? So I think from that perspective, you see them really driving into that area. And what I'm really excited about is, a little bit copying Ted, is the agentic piece and the orchestration piece. I think the orchestration piece is a huge opportunity because we have our own AI pillar, right? It's outside of just what ServiceNow does in AI. It's talking about the hardware, so what NVIDIA does and what Dell EMC does and any other vendor who makes something AI capable, right? The orchestration layer, I think, is going to be really, really important. And I think that's what's going to really make AI sticky. And I'm not speaking for GlideFast in this case, but I know some other partners, including us previously, were like, yeah, AI is cool with ServiceNow, but we're just going to hold off a little bit longer. I don't think you're going to see companies hold off any longer. They have no choice now because I'll give you an example. I had a call yesterday and this morning at 8:30 with the CIO from one of our customers. And the only budget they have available to do some things had to be related directly to AI. That's the mandate coming down from their board, right? So I think you'll see more and more of that. So instead of being reactive, we should be a little bit proactive. And I think one thing that will happen is you will see the agentic AI take over where you're going to see more predictive actions taking place, right? But you can't do that without an orchestration layer to talk to many different levels. So that's the exciting part, I think, from looking at this. If I was outside, it would be really interesting to see, but now I'm inside, so I hope I don't get tunnel vision.
No, I hear you. I think from my prediction, from what I'm seeing, and I've been called a dreamer for this and a fool for out of the possible. But I see every business eventually having their own LLM, their own personalized LLM. So it's what's our code stack say about this? What does our HR organization say about this information? What does our customer database say about this? Right? Obviously, you open that into data vulnerability as that opens, and that's with your governance, risk, and compliance comment comes into play, where you have to have controls around it. But essentially, as it gets cheaper and cheaper and less expensive to train those AI models, I mean, just look at DeepSeek that came out, recently, where it was a fraction of the cost of what it did for other large AI organizations, for their LLMs. Eventually, it'll get down to that lower cost of ownership for training, or even that you train the baseline, and then, oh yeah, here's my data. All right, well, that was down to $10,000 or $100,000, whatever it might be. It's no longer millions or billions to get to that point where now it's all decentralized as far as those models are concerned. And so I can just have my normal conversations where I don't have to go and look through a knowledge base for HR compliance. I don't have to put in a request for finance to get me information back if I want to check something, because it's going to know not even ServiceNow related, just my organization related and how that all ties in. So that's my take. That's what I see. Probably a few years out, but I don't know. We're getting
Could be
closer and closer to that. So,
well, I think that's ServiceNow's opportunity right there. Really, not to tote their horn, but I mean, if they want to be the orchestrator of agentic AI and anything to do with AI, that's their play. And I believe there's smart enough folks leading that company and leading development that they're probably working in that area already, right? So I need to drop a few nuggets of wisdom on, controlling other competitors' agents and things of that nature, right? So I don't believe they just say that without some direction going in that. So that'll be interesting to see. But you said something about DeepSeek. Now, are we believing that DeepSeek is real as far as how much investment it costs to do this? I'm curious. I don't dispute the technology, but did it really only cost $5 million to develop? And if that's the case, then a lot of people are going to be moving money around to do some different things, because I think what the impressive cost that the AI market, the Gartners in the world talk about out there, is well beyond someone investing that amount of money to get a solution viable for many people to use. So that'll be interesting to see as well.
All right. Well, I appreciate you both being here. It was great talking to you, Ted and Terrence from EchoStor, and thank you everybody for joining us.
Thank you, Brett.
Appreciate it.
Do you have a topic in mind that you'd like to discuss? Reach out to us at glidefast.com and subscribe to our podcast for new episodes. Thanks for listening.